Hello, my name is Amanda Grace, and I promised you a play every day in May. So here we are, week 1. We're covering It's a Motherfucking Pleasure, Born with Teeth, and Stereophonic. Every day of a play every day in May has a different theme. Mondays are from my rec list. Tuesdays are shows that are now playing or were recently playing. Wednesdays are shows that I wish I had seen but I didn't. Thursdays are plays from my school days, and Friday are wild cards. Saturday is what's hot, what people are buying right now in the shop I work in, and Sunday is like a spring clean of either sample scripts that I've been meaning to read and haven't, or plays from a long time ago that someone gave me that I need to explore. So being that today, May Day, is Friday the 1st, we are going to talk about It's a Motherfucking Pleasure by FlawBored. If you don't know who FlawBored are a group of 3 people who make art that is challenging, funny, and accessible. The show It's a Motherfucking Pleasure was on tour, and I caught it at the South Bank Center when it was restaged with the disability network I work with. It was really such fun to be sitting as a group of disabled people watching art about the ways in which we are either gently encouraged or to enforced to sell out our disabled identity in order to seem profound or get funding or get the audience to buy in very expected ways. If you work in access, you know that sometimes people's access needs and audiences particularly conflict. And it was really joyful to read a script that was full of navigating these in kind of clumsy but very human ways. And also, I think the joy of this text is that it pushes the idea of disability positivity to its limit of, if we're inviting people into the disabled experience, and if we're saying that this experience is qualitatively neutral, what does that mean carried out to the furthest degree? So it asks a lot of really, I would say, actually timely questions of people, and not just a general morality play, and also not just a show that is funny, but a show that actually deals with some of the deep, dark, I am very open about being a mad person, and I think there's nothing wrong with being mad. I think that being mad is a totally neutral thing, but I will say that I have qualitatively bad experiences directly linked to my madness. And not just as a result of society around my madness, but around the experience I have. And I think this play talks about that, particularly in regards to blindness and partial-sightedness really well. Some of the really interesting things in the text itself, they do outline bits where you could change it based on the buildup of your company, and I think that suits this to restaging across different kinds of disabled companies in ways that not every script is immediately tailored to. A lot of thought went into making this piece a show that could last beyond the original run. They've proved that captions can be fun. They've updated visual descriptions. So my visual description might be that I am a white woman with long blonde hair. I'm wearing a backwards baseball cap and a floral jean jacket and a labyrinth t-shirt. They've got an ICAD, an integrated creative audio description that captures vibes, which I think is so what a lot of people try to do when they make jokes about visual descriptions. That's actually an access tool that's integral to people's experiences. So I think that was it's just a really nice reclaiming and also poking fun at the same time, but also really, really accurate. They just did a great job. This is a great script. If you are just getting back into play reading or you've never read a play before in your life, I think this one is really good because it takes the dynamics of a written text and then it makes it 500 times more accessible. If you like reading plays, if you don't like reading plays, It's a Motherfucking Pleasure by FlawBored. Day 1. Back to a play every day in May. Today is day 2. It is a Saturday, which is the day we talk about what's hot at the bookshop I work at. And people have been picking up pretty much nonstop Born with Teeth by Duffy Adams. I tend to be quite skeptical whenever a play has more than one introduction written into the text. And actually, once I finally sat down and read them, I thought they were both very necessary because Liz Adams talks from the perspective of someone who is writing a play that's about a lot of things, but among them, the censorship of artists in times of fascism and tyranny, while Gabriel Egan is talking about the textual analysis that went into the revelation that the Henry VI parts 1, 2, and 3 plays are actually most likely written by both Shakespeare and Kit Marlowe. But the play itself is actually very much about flirtation with each other and the danger of espionage during the time that Shakespeare and Marlowe were alive. And I think this play is best suited to a team of two really charismatic actors. It feels really fast when you read it. I haven't been in those research rooms where they were pouring apart the language of each writer, so I can't tell whether the text in the play reflects the difference beyond their sort of like differential upbringing of Marlowe being the sort of like posh kid and Shakespeare being the son of a carpenter. Those things are reflected, but I couldn't say, and I would be really excited on a nerdy level of like if the language of each of the characters reflects the way that they wrote in their own, and the difference in the language that has allowed us to understand that they both contributed to these plays. In the way that like The Prince that Abigail Thorne wrote, that play is such a juicy bit of like fantastic commitment to writing in iambic pentameter in Shakespearean style whilst doing a play that turns the conventions of Shakespeare and the restrictions of Shakespeare's society on its head. When I read a play, I go through and I kind of highlight or isolate the bits that strike me as a reader, because then when I see the play staged, I can see how the actors treat that line, because sometimes a line stays special by treating it with intense attention, and sometimes a line stays special by treating it like every other line. There's a line Will has in part 2 that I think reflects the theme of the overall text, which is, "To read you is to know you with glittering specificity." I understand why this one sold out basically every night on the West End. I think it's a really great piece if you're looking for strong duologues that challenge your engagement with other actors. A play every day in May, day 2. It is the 100th anniversary, the centenary, of the general strike here in the UK, which is why I am wearing my union socks to tell you about a play that has been sitting on my shelf, waiting patiently to be read, the highly acclaimed Stereophonic by David Adjmi. David Adjmi wrote the play, which won a Tony Award and then transferred to the West End. The songs were written by Will Butler of Arcade Fire fame. This was a long play. It is a long script, and I had a lot of notes, so I've written down everything I wanted to say today. Stereophonic had a really quick and steady rise to acclaim. It was produced at Playwrights Horizon in 2023, and then went to Broadway in 2024, and then the West End in 2025. So I can only imagine the ride that was for the creative team. You can pick apart the name. Stereophonic can relate to the duality of the staging possibilities, because half of the play takes place in the recording booth and half of it takes place in the studio outside. It might be referring to like the duality within the characters or between the sort of two main couples that appear for most of the play, even though they shuffle, because allegedly Fleetwood Mac is sort of the reference for this piece. Although I really appreciated how when she was interviewed about it, Stevie Nicks was like, "What is that? Cannot be bothered." Even though it's about kind of unrelatable star level experiences, the play itself felt very, and not in a derogatory way. I think this phrase sometimes comes across in theater circles like a bad thing, but it felt very kitchen sink, as in it felt like the conversations these characters were having, the conversations we can imagine our favorite artists might be having, are very much the same conversations that we have in conflicts with the people we love and relate to deeply. I think there's a great opportunity for varying degrees of production that are dependent on the skills you have on stage and off. As in, I think there is a world where you could record some of these tracks live with recording equipment on stage. Of course, that's not necessary in a stage play, but it would be interesting to see if there was a version where an album was recorded live on stage that night. There is a world where that's possible because the songs are performed in their entirety. Will Butler did such a beautiful job of referencing a very specific canon without it feeling like a copy and paste. But if you love Fleetwood Mac, you will love the album, and they've uploaded the entire cast album you can go on YouTube and listen to it. And you should, because my favorite song as it was written down, lyrics only, was Masquerade. But I think my favorite song recorded was Bright, and I think maybe my favorite song performed live would be In Your Arms. So reading it, you can totally see the magic that's possible when you have such incredible active musicians, as we certainly did on the West End. So much of the magic and the like meaty subtext comes out in the songs between each scene. So while the scenes could stand on their own, they're so much stronger with the music. And actually, if I were to reread this piece, instead of reading the script and then going and listening to the album, I would try to do it in tandem and switch, because I think that the audience got a journey that probably isn't possible just from the written page. At no point does it feel like Adjmi is pitching us against a character, and there's no characters that I would mirror to their real life inspirations and feel negatively toward. Even the most laden down and problematic characters in the play, the fact that, especially because the text is dealing with the personal lives of public people, which is always ethically fraught, I am glad that those lives were treated with respect, or at least as a reader, I felt like they were. It's up to those people, right, to decide. The more in tune you are with the music industry, the more you're going to get out of this play. But you don't have to be a musician or a sound engineer to appreciate what's going on here. Thank you so much for watching day 3 of A Play Every Day in May. I will be back tomorrow with one of my very favorites from my rec wall, so hopefully see you then. Hello again, my name is Amanda Grace. If you are new here, I am an actor and a theater librarian and a dramatic bookseller and a playwright, but I'm mostly here today for day 4 of A Play Every Day in May to tell you about my maybe favorite play. That's really hard to say, but it's definitely my favorite off my rec list, because this is a Monday, rec list day. I am here to tell you just some of the wonderful things about Pussy Sludge by Gracie Gardner. Pussy Sludge follows the experiences of a woman who has essentially a toxic waste dump coming out of her vagina, and it follows the experiences she has with people who are meant to care for her in her life that have to interact with the toxic waste crude oil swamp she is in the middle of, because it is of her and part of her. It's such a visible and vulnerable experience for Pussy Sludge, and the way she deals with it as a character, the way it's written by Gardner, is very funny but also very affecting. Pussy Sludge is so special to me because it deals with that thing. Everyone has that experience of like, God, I'm in a body and it's gross. This play captures the duality of like, I'm just a giant meat suit roaming through a wild habitation trying to connect with other meat suits in a way that is like graceful and professional, and so not what this meat suit is. So it talks about the ways in which other people attempt to interact with Pussy Sludge, and often with, you know, societally good intentions, in ways that are hurtful. The play is obviously quite explicit, but I think in that kind of animal explicitness, there's a kind of gentleness that's contrasted by the sort of inescapable, swampy reality of the play. What textually drives me to share this play is that it does what abstract theater can do at its best, and often claims to do, but not really, which is the abstraction and the surreality connect the reader and the audience to the emotionality of their experience of being alive in a body that is chaotic and kind of in some ways really separate from us, and then in lots of other ways obviously really not. I want to say lots of clever things about this play, but I really just want you to read it. It makes me quite emotional, actually. Gracie Gardner, I'm so thankful for this script. If you're watching this and you're not Gracie Gardner and you've never read this play, I think you should. If you're Gracie Gardner, read it and pat yourself on the back, but mostly go find a play that makes you feel seen. Go find a play that connects you with your experiences. For me, that play is Pussy Sludge. I'll see you for day 5. Hi, my name is Amanda Grace, and I am back with day 5 of A Play Every Day in May. Today, we are going to talk about John Proctor is the Villain by Kimberly Bellflower. I don't have my copy in front of me. I passed it on to a friend who does voice work with young people, and because the youths are eating this play up, as they should, I thought that was a more suitable sort of permanent long-term home for the play. But I do have video proving that I read it on the train, in fact, to visit this friend. John Proctor is the Villain is on my plays I wish I had seen list, not because I didn't see it at the Royal Court, but because I didn't see it way back in 2018-19 when it was being developed at my undergraduate. My beautiful friend, the lovely Callie Joslin, was dramaturg on the production, and I was studying abroad at the time, so I couldn't see it. All I knew was that everyone working on it was obsessed with it, and what I think Kimberly notes really lovingly in the acknowledgements at the beginning of the play is that the development of this play involved several years and several cohorts of not just professional actors, but also young people in amateur and collegiate productions. And I think that when you read the play, you can very much feel that actual young people were involved in the development of the script. It's not an adult writing how they think high schoolers speak. It's people who were just high schoolers impacting the language. And the effect of that as a reader is that as someone who has real trouble visualizing things when they're not in front of them and always feels a bit disconnected from a script before the first table read, I could really easily visualize the staging of the play and what it would look like on its feet, which is a bit of magic for me because that doesn't happen often. And I got goosebumps at the end of the show. I know a little bit about the movement in the piece from my friend and from the marketing the show's done, but I can say reading the sort of movement score that's in it is also really powerful. I really appreciate when playwrights write the stage directions how a director would say them to a company in a way that like sounds like a human talking to another human giving an instruction. The stage directions that Bellflower writes are very much not kind of like the voice of God coming in saying XYZ. There's still an opinion or a take inside the stage direction, and I think that's really cool. Each character has really easily understandable perspectives, but none of them felt like caricatures. Part of that, I think, is sort of reinforced in the casting notes, but part of that is, as someone who grew up in close proximity to the place that the play is set, I really appreciated a lot of the local niche points of view, the kinds of characters that I think, particularly probably to English audiences, feel quite outlandish or referencing something that feels completely outdated, but actually the social morass of the society that these students are growing up in, for us in London probably feels 30 years old, but for those students and for students today is very, very real. And if you go see this play and you're like, wow, that's crazy, you should know that it's like very accurate. And what the play does really well is hold the duality of that life-shattering male violence and poor behavior and the mundanity of the life around it. Those conversations exist in the text almost simultaneously in ways that they do in real life, because both of those things are real life. I think the only disappointing thing about this play is that it's as powerful for audiences today as it was for the colleagues I had that worked on it last decade. That is sad, but as long as it is relevant, I'm really glad that there are texts that are handling it. John Proctor is the villain, is playing at the Wyndham's Theatre, and I think you should go see it. I'm gonna go see it. Maybe we'll see each other there. I'll see you tomorrow for another play every day in May. Hello and welcome back to A Play Every Day in May. Today is day 6, I think, and we are going to be talking about Bog Witch by Bryony Kimmings. I think the most famous piece that Bryony has written and toured is I'm a Phoenix Bitch, but Bryony also wrote Credible, Likeable, Superstar Role Model, and co-wrote A Pacifist Guide to the War on Cancer with my friend Brian, and so I was excited when this came up on the sample shelf. I didn't see this when it was on because I was doing a show about a swamp monster and I was busy with rehearsals and also didn't want to have any of this absorbed, not thinking it was totally about a bog. And it's kind of about a bog, but it's mostly about the environment and the ways in which we engage with our ecological anxiety. And it's very much taken from the playwright's personal experience of moving to the countryside with a person they love who is very into environmental awareness and activism, and trying to engage with that without completely collapsing. I really enjoyed in the playtext that all of the company credits include their favorite part of the show, and there are a lot of non-traditional parts of the show, so you get a little taster before you dive in. I also really enjoyed reading about the process in Bryony's rehearsal rooms from Tom, who is a longtime collaborator and wrote the music for Bog Witch, and I think for the other shows as well. Tom Parkinson talks about how Bryony is very egalitarian in the rehearsal room, and so everyone gets to contribute, and if there's a piece that doesn't work for everyone, it gets scrapped, which is interesting and lovely because it's very obviously Bryony's story, but there's a sense of non-ownership about it. It sounds like in the creative process. I'm going to try to see this one on tour because the scenes are interspersed with songs, and some of them are just a couple lines long, and some of them are very obviously sort of like musical numbers. And some of the author's notes about the songs were very flashy, and some of them were very implying that those songs were quite folky or ethereal mood music, and so I would really love to be able to listen to them whilst reading or after reading. There's really clever usage of design elements in this script. So for instance, there is a ball of wool that becomes an animal sort of throughout the show, which is just like one tiny aspect, but you can imagine if you made the choice to have it unravel throughout the show, or if you made the choice to have it be sort of like packaged and unpackaged. There's a lot of mud on stage, so that obviously over the production will change the landscape of the playing space, and there's a lot of audience interaction. And the way Bryony Kimmings writes about the audience interaction is very inviting and gentle and kind, because, I mean, I know from performances I do, sometimes it's kind of quickest to like hype people into joining you, but Bryony very much leaves the time to invite people to come when they're ready. And I think that pays off given the asks of the script, which is to engage in something that we are hardwired with apathy toward. There's so many incredible speeches in this play, actually, like that could easily be performance monologues. And I only think that maybe that might limit the restaging of it because there are so many deeply personal experiences of Bryony's in this show. But maybe this script is a script for soaking up the thing that you saw on stage and living with it again in a way that kind of settles it, which is, I think, especially important for people working in the theater industry, because so often when you see a play, half of the time you're thinking about the mechanics of the play and not actually having the audience experience of being vulnerable to permeation by the play. One of my favorite bits, and I drew a little heart, is the speech by the Badger in The Council of All Beings. I think it is very appropriate. There's a line at the very end that says, "This is meant to be lovely and healing, not awkward and horrid for you." And I think that really sums up Bryony's approach to work that asks a lot, including physical participation, but not limited to that, from the audience, is that it's written with a lot of joy and care, and I'd be interested if you saw this staged to know what you thought about it, but I really enjoyed reading it. I'll see you for day 7, oh my god, of a play every day in May. Hello, my name is Amanda Grace, and I am here for day 7, a full week of a play every day in May, and I'm telling you about a play I am passionate about from my school days, The Wisdom of Eve by Mary Orr. You will have seen this story either on film from the 1951 Academy Award-winning film All About Eve, or more likely from the 2017 National Theatre production of All About Eve that was co-written by Ivo van Hove. But what you won't know if you're one of the many people who come into the shop and ask me for a copy of the play is that that play is based on the screenplay, which was adapted from Mary Orr's play, which already existed. In 1946, Mary Orr was given $5,000 for the rights to the story that she sold to Cosmopolitan to be adapted into a film. Mary's name tends to get lost in the history of the play that came from the film that came from the short story. And so the film came out in 1951, but Mary Orr rewrote her story into a play in 1964. And this play is the 1994 reprint of that from Dramatist Play Service. And as you can see, it served me very well over the years. I'm really, really in love with this play. One of the reasons you should read The Wisdom of Eve, besides the fact that I believe as an artist in respecting and knowing our source material, is that Mary writes from the voice of a person who is very deep in the entertainment industry. This play is saucy, this play is dramatic, this play is full of things that are so catty that they wouldn't make it into a script today. It's the kind of laughable acrimony that only exists backstage and that might be seen as fake in another industry or in another time. There are such incredible things in this script. There's a stage direction that would never fly today, which is Harvey stubs out a cigarette in an asbestos tray on the prompt table. The writing in this, I think, is so full of old school theatrical conventions that I think some of the sort of Shakespearean level honest asides might come across as slightly too earnest, or at least they feel that way when I read them, but they are devices that I think if you play really, really committedly could work. Tennessee Williams often gets the rep for like writing his plays staged exactly in a certain way, but there's directions on like who should sit on which side of which table in this. I miss an old dramatist play text that has the the property plot in the back. I love this play. It's been in my backpack so many times. You can see that like it's bleached where it sat in my window. It has so many good scenes for practicing pacing and how much you can buy into a game with another person, but it also has, if you're a director, some really great kind of side-by-side scenes where people in this environment don't know that people in this environment are there, weaving together in that kind of fugue that's really, really effective if it's done at exactly the right timing. This one's a classic. I think it doesn't have the reputation it deserves. If you're a little bit of a diva, this is the play for you. I'll see you tomorrow for day 8. Hello and welcome back to A Play Every Day in May. Today is day 8 and we are going to be talking very briefly but wonderfully about Wilf by James Ley. My copy of Wilf lives at the Little Theatre Library, which is a free-to-access theatre resource I run at the space in the Isle of Dogs. And you, or anyone for that matter, can make an account and check it out for free and take it home and read it yourself. It's also available on Drama Online. Wilf was first staged at the Traverse Theatre in Scotland, and I'm really, really jealous that it, as far as I know, hasn't been staged in London, although I am willing to make that happen, and I would like to play Thelma, please. Picture a problematic, unreliable, boundaryless narrator on an 80-page journey of non-stop shock. In Wilf, we meet Calvin, who has just gone on his 104th driving lesson, with Thelma, who is a cancelled psychotherapist turned driving instructor. It's so rare to read a script that is so genuinely how people talk, and reading Wilf feels like a warm hug that keeps getting interrupted by fits of giggles. It is incredibly surreal and a laugh every line. I think page 14 has some of the best 3 paragraphs of stage directions I've ever read. And so many wonderful, like, drama gay things happen in this play. Like, Wilf gets sold a solo show while he's cruising at a graveyard, and he falls in a kind of psychic link love with his car, and he does shag the car. I can talk about this play forever because it's just such a joy to read. And I think it's been on my rec list for, like, since the sample came out. It's incredible. Any person, no matter who they are, who comes into the shop, I say, I think you would like Wilf, because it's kind of impossible to not like Wilf. This script is 5 stars, hands down, no crumbs. And I hope you enjoy it. And I'll see you tomorrow for day 9. And so will my surprise window washer. Hello and welcome back to day 9 of A Play Every Day in May. Today is Saturday, so we're talking about the plays that are hot right now. And today we're going to talk just a little bit about Christmas Day by Sam Grabiner. This was on at the Almeida. It was absolutely impossible to get a ticket, but from the time it was on, we had people coming into the shop where I was working begging for the script. I love a good favor play because the favor plays get right into it. It opens with the bio with the one other play Sam has written, but already clearly a mastermind. Boys on the Verge of Tears won an Olivier and a stage award. Christmas Day is definitely a powerhouse follow-up to that. Sometimes it's nice to get a lot of context, but sometimes it's nice to just jump into a play without a lot of preconceptions. All I knew about this play was sort of the tagline, which is that it's about a Jewish family on Christmas Day. And this play sits with a lot of the really uncomfortable dialogue that hopefully lots of families across London and the UK at large are having right now. There are characters who have grown up raised Jewish in the UK and moved to Israel. There are characters who are actively organizing against the genocide in Palestine. And there are characters who are telling the stories their family have always told. The text is very much about the conflict of what happens when all of these stories are interwoven and being told and overlapping each other and very often interrupting each other and not actually being listened to. It in some ways feels like a ceaseless argument. I don't think this play is an aspirational text about how we should navigate these situations. I think it's very much a challenge to the people who are navigating our present conflicts between knowing the history of past oppression in the diasporas we belong to and recognizing the bodies that perpetrate that oppression upon others. I appreciated how theatrical it was, and that it kind of felt like a return to the plays that I read in high school and college. The level of dramatic device that is used, the kind of ex machina things that happen that aren't necessarily unrealistic but are very symbolic in a way that I think is helpful when you're talking about things that so many people are unwilling to even begin to touch. I love that the premise was something kind of inherently jokey, because I hope it allowed people to approach that conversation with openness. It's just so current, and I hope that seeing the chaos unravel on stage was cathartic for people who are having these conversations at their own family tables and their own friend circles. And also, I hope put it in a context of like, this might feel like the hardest thing to do, but actually at the end, everyone here is gonna go home. Grabiner does a really good job of contrasting that with the reality of the lives of people who do not get to go home and have this as a really difficult, painful dinner table conversation. This to me is a story about stories and the meaning of stories and how we pass down stories and which ones we reject and what happens when the story changes. It's 3 acts. The last act is only a few pages and still somehow packs like a whole other journey for several of the characters, and it's such a full and fraught piece. When you talk about a text that's trying to hold a piece of the conversation about atrocities that are happening today, you can't dismantle the whole piece at once in one sitting. Grabiner did a really effective job of narrowing it down to what is this conversation like right now today in this family, and how can we put a spotlight on the places in which we aren't listening to each other. I may have more thoughts later, but those are the thoughts I want to share today. I will see you for day 10 of A Play Every Day in May tomorrow. We were going to be talking about Amelia, but we're going to switch it up a little for current events that I will relate tomorrow. Hello and welcome back to A Play Every Day in May. My name is Amanda Grace and I am here to share with you some wonderful plays across the month. And you might be saying, Amanda, you didn't put up day 10. And I understand that is because I was in Paris and decided to read a play that I purchased last year, or like a couple years ago, from the Librairie Théâtrale, an Agathe Charnet script called Ceci et mon cœur. I have not finished it yet because I read slowly in French, but I want to make that comprehensive. So day 10 is pending. Day 11 is all about Age is a Feeling by Hayley McGee. I don't have the script to hand, but I do have this lovely program from the latest run at Soho Walthamstow. I was so incredibly lucky because when I first read this play, it was completely based off of the cover. I'm a big believer that sometimes the cover can actually do a lot of good to a script. Jason Logan did some wonderful watercolor illustrations for the text, which we'll come back to, but the cover of the play is so simple. It's this beautiful pastel pink, and then it's got a watercolor cherry on it, and I just wanted to read it. I don't know why. That might have been the first play to make me cry without having any kind of idea of what it was like being staged. Age is a Feeling is written as a series of memories, and every time it's staged, the audience picks a selection of the memories. So we watch as the audience. Some of the memories get chosen and shared, which are written quite lyrically and really, really beautiful. And some of the memories get discarded, and the audience does not get to see them. And this device just illustrates how rich our memories are and how much of them will cease to remain by the time we are gone, and kind of touches on that question we all have of like, how much will we be remembered and how long and how complexly. But actually, I think that conversation felt much deeper reading the play than when I saw it, and I was so lucky to see it. I never thought I'd be able to, because it was staged originally at Soho in 2022, although there's a beautiful production timeline in the program that talks about its sort of inception at CPT in 2019 and the journey after that. But anyway, because when you read the text, you're reading all 12, I think, memories that Hayley has written for this narrator to describe. It's almost more tragic because you know you're getting that complete view that's going to be lost. Like, you as the reader have this God's eye view of something that is human and transient and really feels much graver than it did to me in the audience, at least. I felt when I read this play like it was someone writing in the way I would write and speaking in the way I would speak, which is sort of rare for me because I tend to write in lyric as opposed to prose, but also in the way of writing about and observing the things that I would observe. And there's this beautiful repetition that you have to be careful when staging not to make feel rote. But when I read it first, felt very almost spiritual or religious, like an incantation, as opposed to a beating the bush about this line that's so good. I think if you are in a really sensitive place, this might not be the play for you. It's quite tender and honest, and I would say it'd be very hard to read this play and not feel some kind of emotion. But if you're ready for a cry, I couldn't recommend a better play. This is truly one of my favorites. She's fighting with Pussy Sludge, and I'm just so grateful that writing like this exists, and I hope you enjoy it. And I'll see you for day 12 tomorrow, and day 10 at some point. Bye! Hello, my name is Amanda Grace, and I am back for a play every day in May. Today is day 12, I think, and we are talking about Teeth and Smiles by David Hare. Teeth and Smiles originally was shown in 1975 at the Royal Court Theatre after a period of restructuring that David Hare actually talks about in the introduction to this reprint, although technically it was originally staged in 75, so this is the 51st anniversary, maybe not exactly. No, it's the 50th anniversary because it was staged in September 1975 at the Royal Court Theatre with Helen Mirren playing Maggie and Anthony Sher, of all people, playing Anson, which is hysterical when you read the play. This play is currently on the West End with Rebecca Lucy Taylor, aka Self-Esteem, in the role of Maggie. And in addition to the songs written by the Bacap brothers for the original show, there is also a new song at the end called Maggie's Song, written by Self-Esteem. First thing opening it, that there were reviews from the original production that captured this sense of criticism. Like, the reviews really said, we don't think this play succeeded in everything it set out to do. But they went on to say, but that's quite fitting for the theme of the play, which is that this generation of young people going into the 1970s were really seeking a cultural revolution that gave them that ability to shuck off the things that weren't actually making them alive and fulfilled, and an ideology which was really prevalent in the music industry, but kind of amongst all A, arts industries, and B, universities, which is where this play is set at Cambridge. Like posh upper class school, there's a butler, that kind of thing. I was nervous because in the kind of favor playtext way, it was just a list of characters. There were no sort of biographies of who was who. I find it really difficult to, maybe this is just me, but to pin down each individual person written in the script just visually can be quite difficult for me. And there were a couple characters that I think at the end of just a preliminary reading could be interchangeable, but in general, I think over time that chaos gives way because we get to see mostly scenes where several people are kind of echoing the same sentiment or playing the same game back and forth, which can be quite fun, actually. I really enjoyed the game of all of the band members trying to think of the most boring fact, or these two-person asides, which are obviously easier to keep track of and also give us a closer look at who each person is, because most of the characters on stage are under the influence of some kind of substance, and so there's an extra layer of tracking down how authentic they are with what they're saying. Having read Stereophonic for week 1 of A Play Every Day in May, I think the differences between Stereophonic and this play are that Stereophonic songs were seamless with the music. And these songs, or at least the way that they're written, because I don't have the soundtrack, I can't hear them, feel like they're breaking up the script more, and also are less, it's more an opportunity for individual actors to like move their story along rather than multiple actors telling that story together or having another conflict scene, if that makes sense. There were bits that were funny, there were bits that were horrifying, there were a lot of bits that I think would resonate both with people who saw it when it was originally staged 50 years ago, that kind of original punk rock generation. One of the reviewers of the original production, Ronald Bryden, makes a comment about the far theatrical left and the idealism of we can fix things by making them like perfectly liberal enough in production. And the play does feel like it's like a car crash from a rock movie. Reading this felt like going to that thing they made us do in high school, in America at least, where you go and you watch some other kids in your class act out what would happen if you were to drive home from prom under the influence. There was a sort of inevitability to it that I didn't feel with Stereophonic, as a play that I'm only using as a comparison because they've got quite similar A, time frames, and B, like narrative devices of using the music and the fact that everyone's in a band together to play music on stage and use the music to further the story. Not that these two plays are about the same thing. Stereophonic to me is about the interpersonal relationships and the humanity of the industry, and Teeth and Smiles feels like it's about the inhumanity of the industry and the inevitability of the failure of this idealism to save us or actually inhabit our world in a meaningful way that changes our circumstances beyond what we hope for when we're stoned out of our minds. This is a hypothetical by the way. I do not partake. I don't know how I feel about it. I haven't sat with it long enough. I read it this afternoon and I've been waiting for some kind of like profound response to emerge. My main thought reading it was that it would be incredible to watch Helen Mirren do some of those monologues. Not that I don't think she could convincingly, because I've seen that woman ride a motorcycle in the 2004 film Inkheart, but I do think that, like, I don't know, it's that thing of you see a bunch of people not only just missing each other, like ships in the night, but like slamming into each other, and you go, God, what is this for? And I wonder what audiences seeing the show today think of it. Like, leave thinking about their lives, because the show is quite straightforward. The story is what it is. And I think has that kind of we're people and we suck and we're trying vibes. So I don't know what I think of Teeth and Smiles. I'll think on it anyway, and if you've read it or seen it, I would be interested to know your thoughts as a way of sailing around my own. I will see you tomorrow for what I think is day 13, but at this point I'm starting to lose count, to be totally honest. Bye. Hello, my name is Amanda Grace, and I am back for day 13 of A Play Every Day in May, and I've realized how silly it is that I can't keep track because it's a play every day in May, and today is the 13th. So it's day 13. Ignore my hair, I'm just back from work, and a very nice lady said, "I love your hair, it looks like a haystack." And she's not wrong. Today's Wednesday, and a play I so wish I had seen is Iphigenia in Splott by Gary Owen. I'm going to be so real with you, I have no idea where my copy is. I suspect it's at the Little Theatre Library, but you can also read this play on Drama Online if you have a subscription. It is an adaptation of the Greek tragedy set in a suburb outside of Cardiff called Splott. So the first staging was in 2015 in Cardiff with Sophie Melville, who went on to do the revival at the Lyric Hammersmith, which was in London when I first read this play. The show also got developed in 2016 at the Temporary Theatre that was at the National Theatre, and I think it was still directed by Rachel O'Riordan, and it still starred Sophie Melville, and so this resurgence of the play was predicated on a really long history of people seeing it and loving it. So I'm sure I'm by no means the first person to tell you about this play. I had an experience in high school theater being forced to do Greek tragedy and really being bad at it and so hating it. And I've always been nervous about reading Greek-inspired work since then. But actually, I think the thing that cured me of that fear was reading Iphigenia. The whole play is written in verse in the way that a classic Greek play would be, with really localized language, and I think for the first part that makes it a really great piece that I recommend to a lot of young people just getting into performance, because it's going one step forward into that unnaturalness of the verse writing, but one step back in that it's not like you're doing a sonnet, do you know? Gary Owen did a good job, as he always does actually, of making stories that are hard to tell because of their timing or their theme into plays that you don't want to stop watching or reading in this case. So Iphigenia, however you say it, people are very adamant about their pronunciation, and I am accepting of all, is essentially like the human wastebasket that we as a society put our troubles into. She is the tragic figure that is the martyr so that the rest of us can function without guilt, and also without being held down by responsibilities to our fellow human. And in that way, what is so beautiful about this story that's been so lovingly crafted for young people growing up in Splott specifically is that it feels more accessible to me as a reader than lots of the plays that were written for me. It would take a powerhouse performer to do this show all the way through night after night. Sophie Melville is a machine. Having not had the luxury of seeing her performance, I can tell you that doing this script every night would be hard. The first impression I had of the character was that she had so much rage, which is something we very rarely get to see in a textured way in female characters on stage. Usually, if a woman is angry, she's also the villain. Or if a woman is angry, it's about something that needs to be resolved. And there is no resolution in this. There's no resolution in tragedy. It's not this big, what do we do to fix society? It's just this, like, really loving homage to the people who are dealing with the society while everyone else tries to figure out how to fix it from on high. Part of the play is about how we deal with things that could be gifts or curses, and you could read this whole play in one sitting, and I think you should, but I think you should have like an emotional support drink and maybe some plans afterward just in case. If I'm being honest, it's one of the only plays that I would love to do that I also openly recommend to other people because it is so eternal, and I think every young woman actor would benefit from reading this play. And it offers a really open doorway, like parting a curtain to the channeling of your experiences into the very specific experiences of another. This is a really lovely script, and sad, and beautiful, and it will teach you something. And in the meantime, I will see you tomorrow for day 14. Hello, my name is Amanda Grace, and I am back with day 14 of a play every day in May. And today's play is Anna in the Tropics by Nilo Cruz. Thursdays are all about plays that I grew up with in my school days, and Anna in the Tropics was one of those plays that was kept on file for scene work studies and was always at Florida State Thespian Competition, and I think even showed up in some of the monologue transcription work I did. Like, it was a very popular play. And it actually won the 2003 Pulitzer for Best Drama, but I was not aware of that. I just saw it everywhere. The play itself was produced originally in Florida, I think in Coral Gables or somewhere similar, in 2002. And then it had like quite a steady meteoric rise to fame overnight. So it went from Florida to the South Coast Rep, and then it went to Broadway, where it went up against an Edward Albee and won the Pulitzer, and then it went on tour, and then there was a Spanish version in Madrid, and then it came here to London, and it was at the Hampstead Theatre, which I think just goes to show how if you have a piece that's so connected to the community it's formed in, and just made so solidly real, then it has the foundation to kind of unfurl globally. But it was really lovely to have as a piece in school because it's about a Cuban-American family living in Tampa who have a cigar factory, and they all work in some capacity in the cigar factory. There's sort of the patriarch and then his half-brother who wants a bigger piece than he currently has, and the matriarch, and then they've got two daughters, and the one daughter is married and the one is much younger, but it's kind of about them as a factory getting this new lector to come in and read Anna Karenina to them. The whole play revolves around this very specific Cuban cultural practice of having literature read on the factory floor. And part of that was because in 1929, when the play is set, not everyone would have been able to read, but part of it is because it was seen as quite an instrumental part of the process. Like in the play, one of the characters likens having reading on the factory floor as a breeze in an open window in the summer of Florida, which is swelteringly hot, even if you do have aircon. And if you didn't, as they wouldn't have, you need all the breeze you can get. So part of it is edification, but part of it is this like really deep need to hold on to culture, and there's a conflict between the brothers up here in between, like, should we bring in machinery to expedite the process and then lose the cultural heritage part of having someone read, and indeed making the cigars by hand. So it's kind of like a play about old and new priorities. There's the line in this play, machines are stealing our jobs, and if that was true in 1929 Tampa, then like we're all fucked. I think what the play does really well is that the environment is very strong, and the cultural touchstones are written very clearly by Cruz, including this bit where he writes about a paragraph stage direction about why it would be considered an insult to hand someone a cigar directly, which is just a lovely gesture for readers who would not have come from that cultural context. And I didn't find it distracted from the text. What did distract from the text a little bit for me was that there were a couple passages. One was on page 29 that I think in today's reading would be seen as kind of romanticizing disability by non-disabled people. Some of it with language that, like, I do not feel great about. if the sense of the writing didn't feel like it was meant to be like poignant, I would maybe see it as like an individual character flaw, but I think I'm a little ambiguous as to whether like that's just was like but I mean most people have a don't they? The writing itself is very literal. It's people in conversations talking to each other, working through their conflicts, but the imagery is really beautiful. There's a scene between the eldest daughter and her husband where she explains to him her relationship with her lover that I think was like, wow. And it was only 3 pages. Having read it and having come from a background of seeing pieces of it all the place, I would really love to see the whole thing staged at once. It felt very fast, but actually it's a play written to be performed in 2 acts, and I think probably enough happens that it could take a lot longer. There was also like a detail in the opening scene that I don't want to sort of like spoil, but I wasn't sure why it happened. If you had asked me if a man or a woman wrote this play, I would have said a man. But ultimately, like when I was growing up, it was very easy and common for the curriculums, even in the arts, to be very centric to like the WASP American experience. And so to have something like this that to me is such a part of that educational canon, feels like that's increasingly underrated in schools. Like if I see one more school reading The Crucible and then a Tennessee Williams play, I'm gonna hurl. Like I'm grateful that I had this piece to remember and look back on today. And I will see you tomorrow for day 15. We're halfway done. I still owe you a day 10, but we're getting to that. Don't worry. I'll see you tomorrow. Hello, my name is Amanda Grace, and I am back with another play every day in May. Today is day 15. We're halfway done. I mean, I should be sad, right? We're halfway done. Boo! And today we are talking about an excellent play, totally devoid of reason to boo, called The Boys Are Kissing by Zach Zarafshan. Today is Friday, it's a wild card day, and this play is indeed wild. If someone comes in and they say they like surreal things, and they're giving a little, like, joyous vibe, I always send them to this play. The whole premise of the play is exactly what it says on the tin. 2 boys are found kissing on the school playground, and their parents have to have a meeting to decide what to do about it. If you're not watching, it's heavy quotation marks on what to do about it. The notes I made when I first read this play years ago were, it's a little too real, the conversation is a little too close to home if you're a little fruity like me, and definitely full of parenting fails. I thought it was so clever. I wrote Deus ex machina, as in my favorite device used in the script is that there are 2 sort of like guardian angel cherub creatures that come in and are hopefully going to guide the parents into being better people and more accepting of their children, but it's very camp. The whole thing, 1 word summary of this play, camp. The text for this play is joyful, even as it's describing some utter imbecility. But it's also forgiving where I don't know if I would be. Zach Zarafshan is very graceful about the conversation and the way that it's held. Even though we're putting a spotlight on how unnecessary that conversation is, I think the fact that there's still space for that conversation to happen is a kind of grace in itself. The play has a lot of meta elements in it, but it never feels contrived. It really toes the line between being maximalist and being totally unbuyable. My notes ended, a completely gleeful concept executed with strength. The cover art is gorgeous. I'm going to find out who made it. 1 second. Okay, the poster designer isn't credited in the original staging credits, but poster art's beautiful. God, I hope it's not AI. The whole thing's just a riot. If you've ever had to be in a conversation, particularly with adults that are supposed to care for you, that you felt like smashing your face against a wall, this one will be fun unless it's too soon, in which case the giggles will come later, I promise. And I will see you tomorrow for day 16. Today is a Saturday and I am dressed to party. Hi, my name is Amanda Grace and I am here, as you know, with a play every day in May. And today, day 16, we are going to be talking about Period Party by Gayatri Kamalakanthan. On Saturdays, we talk about what's hot in the bookshop I work at. One of my colleagues saw this play multiple times and couldn't stop raving about it. So Period Party is written about a celebration that happens in Tamil families within the context of Tamil displacement and genocide. And it also covers, both in the author's notes and in the text itself, how Britain's imperial presence in Sri Lanka created this alienation between Tamil people who were sort of force-fed British Protestant values and the queerness that's always been inherent in the community. And actually there's both in the author's note and the journey of the main character, Krish, returning to these Tamil words for non-binary and queer and pansexual that have always existed, but that have been erased from lots of families' dictionaries as a direct result of British imperial presence and oppression. I really enjoyed that the playwright included in the author's note this sentiment that they think of the writing process as a sort of rehearsal for our lives, which I don't think is to say that, like, the characters have to be going on the same journeys we are, but that... I mean, when I first started working in theater, the sentiment was shared with me that the things we do on stage are the things we would never get to do in real life. And I think the use of the stage to reclaim things perhaps before the people around us are ready, or to celebrate the things that society might not be willing to celebrate yet in the same way as we are able to stage them, is a really beautiful use, particularly for young people. And this play is about young people. It's about a 15-year-old non-binary person called Krish and their best friend Bryony, and the relationship between both of them, and also between Krish and Krish's mum, Brintha. It's just a really lovely read. Throughout the play, the way it's structured, there's a lot of like scenes and then asides from Krish to the audience, and these often follow a moment of conflict with Krish's mum. Discrepancy in language and the language barrier becomes a really transferable or translatable allegory for the idea that the things we aren't accepting of, we just genuinely might not be able to understand, and finding a way to learn to understand those things, or at least that's what I got. And what I really appreciated was that in the inclusion of this thing of queerness always being involved in Tamil language, there's a lot of conversations that Krish has with other Tamil elders who are also queer, and so the play isn't reducing the inability to conceptualize queerness to like a young versus old debate. There's really beautiful moments of like tenderness and intimacy between the two young people that mirror my experiences, and those moments didn't feel patronizing, they were just really nice. I would have loved like one or two more falling action scenes, just because we just go to the family being back together, and maybe to be fair, maybe the point is that some people just will never have that conversation openly or aren't otherwise ready to now. Like, maybe that's the point. But given how nicely it wrapped up, I would have just loved something there, personally. The sense I got from everyone who saw it at the Soho was just joy, and it is such a feel-good script. I read the whole thing in, I think, maybe an hour, and it was just warm fuzzies. Good to be a young queer person in the world. Good to reclaim your heritage. I think you'll like it. And I'll see you tomorrow for day 17.